Sound ready?
Perfect.
Wait a
All
minute.
right.
I did
So we still have just a few more minutes. We'll be getting everyone else. Hopefully a few more people are signing on. Michael Waltz and Jonathan Swartz, I trust you guys can hear us.
Yeah, I can hear you well. Can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you.
Yes, we can. We'll be presenting our speaker, Alan Ware, in just a moment. We're just
I am.
Waiting a few more minutes to get started.
They can't hear me at home though, I don't think. No, they can't off of this one. Yeah, no, they can't off of this one. Hey, Tim Crane, can you hear me?
Okay, we just got Terry Griffin just joined.
Oh, Matt Schmidt, there's a responsive one. Hey, Matt.
Okay,
Schmidt.
we're gonna wait one more minute. Wait till right up at 7:50, and we'll get started.
Okay.
Hey, Matt Schmidt, could you give me thumbs up if you could hear me? Matt Schmidt, can you hear me? All right, how do I figure this out? If I mute myself here. Oh, there we go. Hey, Cole, can you hear me? Can you still hear me right now, Cole?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so we have a, and then what are you looking at right now? Are you looking at me in my desk chair?
Yeah, on the screen share thing. Yeah.
Okay, so I think on that camera, if I have it correct, CADCAM Design Engineer is presenting.
All right, so hello everyone. My name is Kevin McGrew, and I am the president of Sacramento Valley Manufacturing Alliance. We welcome you today. We are a group of manufacturers in the Sacramento region that are here to work with educators and students of the area to learn more about advanced manufacturing jobs and careers. Today,
I'm not positive I get this figured out.
And
so if I can't get this figured out, just do the best you can watching.
See here.
You still hear me fine, right, Cole?
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna just hit the super quick and see if.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and mute Jonathan. I'm gonna turn it over to Alan Ware and Dean Peckham. And again, thank you for joining. Alan?
Okay. I guess I can go ahead and get started here.
Yes, you can.
All right, cool. All right, hello everybody. My name is Alan Ware. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I guess I'm supposed to here talk to you about design engineering and CAD and CAM. So I guess I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into it. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and launch into this presentation. Cool. All right. So can everybody see me okay? Okay. I'm gonna.
Good.
Okay, cool. All right. So my name is Alan Ware. Graduated 2007, mechanical engineering, Bradley University. Got my degree in mechanical engineering. Coming out of school, I worked for a company called Rockwell Collins, and before that, various construction subcontractors. I currently do work under the business name AMW Design. Previously taught at Sierra College. I've done work with Hacker Lab. Also done a lot of work with nonprofit Operation Innovate Code for Hood, where we focus on doing youth STEM education. I currently do a lot of work with Green Technical Education and Employment, doing online, well, before the pandemic, doing youth STEM classes, and now we've moved a lot of that online. Was a hackathon finalist at the Harvest Hackathon in Tokyo, Japan, about 3 years ago. And also, most recently, I was on a show on Disney Plus, Shop Class, Season 1, Episode 4. So, Bridge or Bust. So, that was kind of cool. As I said before, I kind of make a whole lot of different stuff. These are just different pictures of stuff that I've done. Generally function as kind of a design engineer, doing CAD and design work. So, these are just kind of different stuff that I've done over the years. So, to kind of explain what I do, what I tell people is that I help people make things. That's what I tell myself. What I tell other people is I do nerdy stuff for money. That usually breaks it down simply enough for people. And then officially, I say AMW Design provides services, including but not limited to computer-aided drafting, 3D modeling and mechanical design, mobile application deployment, educational services, prototype design, and manufacturing consulting. That's what you'll find on my website. Target audience clients are entrepreneurs and small to medium-sized businesses. Ideally, what I do is I work with people who want to get something built and they don't quite know what to do, or maybe small to medium-sized businesses that need a little bit more engineering help. So they don't have the manpower on hand to take care of it. So, tools of the trade. I do a lot of, even though I'm pretty computer focused, I do a lot of pen and paper work. I think it's kind of funny for me to be as computer active as I can. I still like to do a lot of pen and paper and with the design stuff. I mean, I'm really big about kind of getting my ideas down. And also, what's also kind of funny is that one of the things that led me into design as kind of a field is that I can't draw. Well, at least I thought I couldn't when I couldn't start. So kind of the computer-aided drafting, and then also like the mechanical drawing with like triangles, pencils, compasses, and things like that, kind of gave me a way to kind of gave me the rules of the road to kind of where I couldn't say I couldn't draw. So I guess I can kind of draw, but I didn't think that when I first got started. So we talk about design engineering, right? And so what I wanted to do was start with this question of what is design? And so I'm really big on definitions. And design is, looking up a couple of definitions that I like, to pull together something new or arrange existing things in a new way or satisfy a recognized need of society. Another way is to fashion after a plan. And then my favorite, which is to create something that has never been. And then design engineers are the one that create the plans that something is built from. So when we think about manufacturing, and we're thinking of trying to expose this as kind of explain more about it as kind of a field to get into. When you think about it, everything that you deal with has been made. Somebody had to sit down and think about how to build, like from the buildings that we walk into, from the desk that you're working at, from the chairs that we're sitting in. You know, everything is intentional, and designing is about how do we go through the process of creating these things. And one of the things that I really like about the definition of design is that in that first one is this idea of having a recognized need of society. Because I like to think of design as something where desire made manifest. Like I want something to happen, so therefore I make a thing to do it. Like I want my behind to be comfortable, so I create a chair to sit in. I need something to work on, so I create a desk. So when you think about how we make these things, design engineers are the people who kind of go across and do this. And then the tools that we use are pen and paper, or at least in my case, a lot of computer-aided drafting and 3D software. So what does a design engineer need? I'd say communication and collaboration are essential to the job. which is funny because if you think stereotypically, we don't always think about engineers as skilled in communicating. You know, sometimes true, but when you really think about like what's required to make something, communication is really vital to the effort, especially with manufacturing. Because if we go back to this idea of like to fashion after a plan, if you're going to make something, and if you're going to make something right, there's a lot of specific information that has to be communicated effectively. And so at every point in the process, from thinking about what we're building, why we're building it, how much of it we're going to build, how much it's going to cost to build, all of that requires a lot of keeping track of a lot of different things. And especially because you can't really do anything alone, it's a cumulative process. So when you're in that design role, you're the person or one of the people that's really putting all of this pulling all of this information together. So in my case, when I'm working with designs, I'm creating like a 3D model, I'm creating production drawings, and then we're sending those out to get manufactured. And so I really enjoy the creation, to be involved with the creative part of that. You need to be able to be flexible and adaptable in your thinking. While you're often going to build off of what has come before, you're going to have to add something new to the mix. I think one of the things which is kind of really interesting to me when I first kind of started working as an engineer was we were always kind of, there was always this desire to pull from previous designs, which is good because you don't want to redo work. But there's always something new to the mix, because otherwise, if you could just pull off a pre-design, you would just be building that thing. So even when you're pulling from something else, you still have to add something of your own to it to create something that has never been. So really two things that are definitely important to help you accomplish that are the courage to propose new ideas and novel solutions, and the discipline to analyze and vet those submissions that we just mentioned. So what I do, or what I have done, detail drawings. So these are often created from a 3D model, and these will give valuable information about size, shape, significant dimensions, and manufacturing instructions. So here we have a drawing for a part that I did years ago. And generally, this is just a kind of sample manufacturing drawing that I would create from a 3D model. So I would go in, I would draw this 3D model, and then I would bring this into a drawing and then put down all these different dimensions. So I have dimensions which show how big it is. There's things like hole call outs, how big it needs to be, if there's any specialty instructions, the material that it's made out of, and things like this. So the idea is that I could give this document to a manufacturer, and then they should be able to create this object without any further input from me, hopefully. But that's the reason when I'm talking about why communication and all these things are important, because you have to, because when you think about what you're doing, what it takes to make something, you have to communicate every single facet of this object, because if you don't do that, it's not going to be made correctly. And you're going to have to communicate this down to a very, very specific point to really kind of get across what you want to have built. Really, when you're working in kind of these kind of capacities, you're really having to answer every question about it. You don't want to deal with assumptions. You want to think about this specifically. It's going to be this many inches wide, this many inches long. It's going to be made out of this material. This hole needs to be this depth. And kind of the process for me in kind of working through these parts is really to answer all of those questions. So another point of this can be exploded views. So earlier we had a specific part, but then often, because when you're creating a design, especially when it comes to like a part or a manufactured part, you have a lot of parts that are going to fit together. So, and again, in creating these 3D models, another thing which is going to be useful is an exploded view, which gives a representation of how these pieces fit together, and also the identification of individual components. One of the things that I talked about again is this communication aspect, how communication is really vital to the discipline. And so a lot of what I'm doing is I'm creating tools or images or documents that visually represent something. So I'm basically visually communicating the design of how something is supposed to work together, or how these parts are supposed to go. And in this case, this kind of gives you a visual of how this entire part's going to come together, and also the identifiers for the individual components. And so with that, you can also go into a bill of material. And so where we had the kind of visual representation of all the points in the previous drawing. With the bill of material, this is really everything that's going to make up an object down to the individual screws. And it's, again, that exact nature that's required when it comes to manufacturing. Like this is like on this bill of material here, item 10 is a number 250 is a 256 standoff. 256 is it's a call out for a type of screw. And then we have all the different parts and where they come from. And also sourcing is very important as well. So we're doing this virtually because of the pandemic, and that's been interesting because it's also exposed a lot of things where we talk about like supply chains, like where are things coming from? How long is it going to take to get there? You know, is there going to, can the events going on in the world disrupt the flow of materials? So even as we find ourselves within the state of the world right now, it's also making us examine how we do things and how that affects us as manufacturers. And of course, the show still has to go on. So in talking about how I got here, I graduated high school June 2002, and then I actually had an internship. My first job, I was actually pretty lucky. My first job was an internship with a company called Johnson Controls. They did building temperature control systems. So I actually had my first job before I started college. I actually got it through a program called Inroads, which helped minority youth get internships in tech and business and engineering and things like that. So that got me started. So I did that. I pretty much graduated high school, and I think my first day of work was like 2 days later. And so I spent my first summer after graduating high school pretty much working. And then I started college, Bradley University, school in Peoria, Illinois, in August 2002. And then pretty much from there, you know, my goal was pretty much to always kind of try to find an internship. That's one thing that I was actually pretty fortunate with while I was in college. I worked at Johnson Controls for about 3 summers, and then they couldn't bring me back. And then I actually, through an engineer that I had met while working for Johnson Controls, he said, "Hey, I'm working at this place, CNC Group. We're looking for people." So I got an internship there. And then I was working there for a little bit. Then while I was in college, I was again looking for work, and by this point I had experience because controls was basically kind of like a later phase of construction, and so construction's always going on. But that had really helped me kind of like there was a business area that I had experience in. I could speak to it, and I was still in college, so I was relatively cheap. So then I turned that into an internship at Dynamic Controls, and I basically, you know, what I basically did was decided one day, okay, I need to get an internship. I knew I had experience in controls, so I basically opened up a phone book. What is that? And called all of the construction contractors in Peoria. Two of them reached out to me, sent them my resume, got an interview with one, and then they ended up hiring me on as an intern. And then my last internship was with Rockwell Collins, and a division of Rockwell Collins that I worked for actually designed and built full flight simulators. So I got that internship, and I ended up getting that. I ended up working for them my last summer in college. In summer 2007, I ended up graduating in December 2007, and then I left that summer with a full offer. I went back to Bradley, graduated with my Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering, and then I went to work for Rockwell Collins as a mechanical engineer. I was there for about 3 years. Then stuff got weird with the economy back in kind of like about the late aughts, 2009. We had the sequestration, recession, things like that. I ended up moving to New Jersey and worked for as a mechanical engineer for a small company, FiberSpan. And this is where my story gets kind of a little different, because just to be perfectly honest, it's been long enough. FiberSpan was not a good experience for a lot of reasons. And so what ended up happening was I ended up getting laid off. And then so I got laid off. And then I kind of also kind of coming off that experience of working at FiberSpan, I really started to think a lot about, what do I want to do and things like that, because it just hadn't been a good work experience. And so what I kind of resolved to do was I said, well, I guess I'll just kind of move to California. At that time, Silicon Valley, was doing a lot of stuff. I mean, they're still doing a lot of stuff. And I just asked myself, well, I wanted to make some type of change, and especially with as kind of despondent that my time at Fiberspan had kind of made me, I was really looking to kind of make any change. So I basically moved across country, was crashing on my uncle's couch, and was just started coming out here looking for jobs in Silicon Valley. Through that, I kind of started networking in Sacramento. Found out about Hacker Lab, started hanging out there because if nothing else, I could go there and apply for jobs, and then not be going to Starbucks every day. But I was just going to Starbucks every day. And then through Hacker Lab, I started doing stuff with them, started helping out with them, started teaching classes there in the makerspace on 3D printing and 3D design, which was with my work experience. I had a lot of experience with that. And then that turned into an opportunity with the Sacramento Public Library, where I worked as a consultant and helped them with their 3D design. Then also one of the other things is that, but at this point in my career, I had a lot of experience with the design side, but I hadn't had a lot of experience with like the manufacturing side. So I also put in some time working at a couple machine shops. And then from that experience, which is another thing which I don't have enough time talking about, to really going to all of that. Then somewhere about then, because again, I had just kind of like, my entire goal was just to kind of work as a mechanical engineer, and then stuff got weird. And then when I moved out to California, I was just freelancing and doing all this other stuff. Then that really kind of turned into like, well, maybe I could just kind of do my own business. And I almost kind of, I tell people that I started working for myself out of frustration. But when that hit, and I really started about the time when I worked at the library and then was working at that machine shop, that's when I first started to kind of, the idea first kind of started to go like, oh, wait a minute, I could actually like just kind of just do stuff and use these skills. And from there, it's kind of just turned into all this other stuff. So then all that stuff that I listed before, where it's like I did the stuff with the show, I did the hackathon in Japan, I've done various kind of small projects here and there. So it's been a really, really kind of interesting kind of path for me. And where I'm going forward, I mean, what I tell people is that I just started freelancing out of frustration. I've just really just taken it a day at a time since then. So one of the things that I think is important when it comes to a lot of this stuff, but the one thing which I take away from my story and my experience is that you really want to develop a skill. And I think that that's something that, you know, that you really, when you think about, you know, what you're going to do as you move on, because we all, well, I guess you all as youth, you're going to want to, you know, you're going to go up here and get out of school. And then at some point, you're going to have to do something to convince somebody to give you money. So if you want to do something to convince somebody to give you money, you got to be good at something. And so that specialization sets you apart. One of the reasons that I think manufacturing and surrounded fields are kind of attractive is because there's a skill. It's skill. It's a skill, and also it's not a skill that everybody has. You know, we have this consumer culture where we give money, we give money, and then we take we get objects, but we really don't think a lot about how things are made. And making things is difficult. You know, there's a lot that goes into it, and I think that if you are in a position to where you can make something, that's a skill that's generally always going to be in demand. Again, looking back to where we find ourselves currently with the state of the world and the pandemic and things like that. We talk about reshoring of manufacturing, how we were outsourcing so much stuff, but a lot of the things that are happening now has really driven home the fact about how we really need to be making things here. We really need to make sure that we have the capability to make things here. And the other thing about making things is that, just like I was saying before about communication and collaboration, there's a lot of different steps to that process. So if you can kind of identify a skill, find something to get better at, find something to get good at, and then take responsibility for it. I think one of the biggest mistakes that I made earlier in my career is that I was just out of school. I was going to work at Rockwell Collins. And I guess I kind of just walked in the door like expecting Rockwell Collins to make me into the engineer that I needed to be. And so it wasn't until after I left and then I kind of came out here that I really had to be like, well, no, like I'm the one that has to kind of decide what I'm going to do and what I'm going to get good at, because nobody else is going to do it for me. And especially again with where things are and the nature of just in the nature of the world right now, you really have to have regardless of what you're doing, you really have to have that internal drive to be like, this is what, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to get good at. Now, I'm lucky in a case in that I've known I wanted to be an engineer since I was 9 years old. So that's always kind of interesting for me, because at least in my case, when I was young, there were all these things that were kind of pushing me towards this direction. I was good in math, good in science. I tell people I didn't want to be a doctor because I can't stand the sight of blood. I didn't want to be a lawyer because I didn't want to deal with the ethics of defending a guilty person or sending an innocent person to jail. That's how I thought when I was 9 years old. But I had creativity, I had ideas, I had things I wanted to build, but I didn't have the skills I didn't immediately have the skills to make them. So engineering and things like that appealed to me, because I didn't know how to go to school to be an inventor, but from what I had seen about engineering and all these different things, that was a way for me to kind of harness these skills so I could basically give life to my creations. And I think that that's really the thing that attracts me about the entire design engineering kind of as a philosophy. Now, what's interesting about it is that what I thought was, I'd go into school to be an engineer, is that, okay, I'm going to take all these classes, and then I'm just going to go to a desk, sit down, and I'm just going to do my work, and that's going to be it. Well, the thing is that when you're working as an engineer, again, you're working in groups. You can't. My first job out of college was working for these was working these full flight simulators. I don't know if I'm gonna. Let me go ahead and I'll go ahead and actually stop. Well, anyway, I'll go back to that. But I'm working in these large groups, and so we're having meetings, we're having discussions and things like that. So communication is kind of vital to the discipline. So one more thing that I wanted to kind of highlight is when we were talking about this, one thing that was recommended was giving you some sort of product highlight. And so one of the kind of interesting things that I had built, one of the things that I'm most proud of, is actually one of my first really complete design projects. And that's this matchbox for Cineo lighting. And actually a lot of the drawings that I've been showing have been related to this. And what this was just a small photovoltaic light that's basically built off this idea of polycarbonate panels that glow when they're exposed to a specific wavelength of light. So the idea was it was for photography and video. And so it was a small light about this big. I actually don't have it offhand. I don't have it in my office right now. But what was interesting about it was that I was hired by Cineo Lighting, and I worked a lot with the creative director. And what we really did was we took this project from concept to production. So we went from drawing sketches and him sending me Illustrator files to me making drawings like the ones that I showed you before and even more. Actually, the one before was actually the full bill of material for the final object. And then kind of going back and forth, having these meetings, having these collaborations, where we're also kind of bringing in the electrical as well, because with me as a mechanical engineer, my job was just to kind of go ahead and draw the entire thing, but I have to also make where things fit. So then the electrical engineer is giving me saying, this is where this board is, this is where this hole is, this is where things have to fit. I played a lot of Tetris when I was a kid, so Tetris and Legos is kind of really, well, I still play Tetris and Legos, so not even when I was a kid. But putting that together is kind of, how I describe what I do. And so then I created all of the fabrication and assembly drawings, and then I kind of created the 3D printed prototypes from that. So one of the things that I think is interesting is that we have a lot of, there's a lot of software out there. A lot of what I do is software based. If I had a little bit more time, I'd actually kind of demonstrate some of these programs that I use. Maybe if there's a question, I can kind of get into that. But good programs which you should check out is Fusion 360, which are free for students. It's a good 3D modeling tool. Autodesk makes it. They do a lot of stuff. SolidWorks, Creo Elements Pro, CATIA, NX, Unigraphics. All these are commercial 3D design programs. If you can get your hands on them, these are good. Earlier, I talked about having a skill. Well, using these programs is a skill that you can use. One of the first things that I did in my first internship was I learned how to use AutoCAD. So one of the ways that I was able to get those later internships was to be like, oh yeah, I know how to use AutoCAD. I mean, that's a skill. That's something that you can take, you can put down and say, I know how to do this. And that's something that people will pay you for. Because really that's what it's about. It's about getting money. How do I get money? And if you have skills, that's how you get money. So you really want to develop those. Also, there's a lot of open source programs out there. Inkscape is a vector graphics program that's similar to Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop, pardon me, CorelDRAW. Very, very powerful, and it's also something that I use a lot with computer-aided drafting and with design tools. When we talk about working with things like laser cutters, 3D printers, and things like that, there's a lot of manipulation of these type of files, and Inkscape is a really, really good tool to do that. The new image manipulation program, GIMP for short, it's an open source analog to Adobe Photoshop. It's the same type of thing where I can kind of take these files and I can kind of modify them. And as we look at how much computers are with everything, especially with manufacturing, I think one of the skills that'll definitely be one of the skills that's definitely helped me and it helps me stay employed and put food on my table is just the ability to be flexible and kind of work across these different tools. Blender again is kind of more for like CG artists as well, but there's also an avenue for that when you're dealing with computer-based manufacturing and design tools as well. So with that, I think that puts me at 27 minutes. So I guess I will. So I guess I'll kind of open it up and then see if there's any questions or anything like that. Whew.
Alan, this is Dean. Thanks
Okay.
very much. Hey, we did get a question already from one of the students, Dakota, who said, I've always wanted to be an engineer, and my grandfather says I should go into mechanical engineering because it's the most enjoyable. Do you have similar sentiments? Do you find mechanical engineering to be more enjoyable than other aspects?
Absolutely. I tell people that I got into mechanical engineering because it's tangible. So what's funny is that I do a lot of computer stuff. I actually teach people how to program and things like that. And so in a lot of circles, people kind of see me as a computer guy, which is fairly accurate. But I just happen to be an engineer that happens to know how to program. I tell people I'm an engineer first. And so I think that I tell people I got in it. When I was going into college, I was either going to study computer science or mechanical engineering. And I went into engineering because I figured it would be better to be an academically trained engineer and a self-taught programmer than an academically trained programmer and a self-taught engineer. So I really like mechanical engineering because it's an old discipline, and I think it affects how I look at problems, because when you're a mechanical engineer, you're always thinking about failure, stress, strain, and things like that. So again, looking at, like, even though I do like a lot of computer stuff, I like the aspect that it's given me to problem solving and also systems, because it's not so much a factor of if something's going to fail, it's just when. Now maybe it may fail like 200 or 2,000 years from now, but one of the things that I like the most about having studied mechanical engineering as opposed to other disciplines is just that the perspective that it gives me on systems.
Okay, you've really precipitated a lot of questions here, so I'll just go through them one at a time. So,
Right.
So thanks very much. Jacob from West Park, what does an average workday look like for you? And I think yours is kind of unique because you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah. So I'll
He
answer
till noon and then he gets up.
Yeah. Actually, I'm actually more on the tail end of my day now. So I'll actually answer that in two ways. So I'll answer that what it was like when I was working in industry, and I'll answer what it's like working now. Basically, when I was working for Rockwell Collins and other companies. So generally, while it is communicative on a day-by-day, it's always kind of like check-in points, right? So if I'm working on a project, I wouldn't be interfacing with people every day, but we'd always have like our project kickoff meetings, and we'd have status meetings like every 2 or 3 weeks, right? So generally, what I would do is I would kind of, over the course of a week or something like that, I would meet with my supervisor or my team lead. We talk about the specifics of a project. He'd outline whatever I want to go, and then I would go and get to designing. So a lot of what I would do would be like to go in a program like SolidWorks or something like that, and just on a simple level, just kind of go in here and then just start kind of making stuff. So if I want to like create like a sketch or something like this, because this is what I used to joke about to people is that I essentially get paid to draw. And then so what you can do in a program like this is I can go out here, I can just kind of draw a different little outline, and then kind of go from this. Now, I'd obviously be making something a little bit more complicated than what I'm showing you now, but essentially what you can do is you can kind of make outlines. Oops, screwed that up. And then you can kind of build it out from there. So essentially, according to whatever situation had been given to me, I'd go ahead and I would just kind of start on whatever my design is. I'd make my widget or whatever. And then while working on this, what I'd be doing is I'd be sending emails going back to people saying like, is this okay? Does this look right? Is this going to that? And then you'd go into design reviews where you talk about your project, you get feedback on your design, and then you'd eventually submit your design, and then the process repeats. For me now, ain't no telling what I'm doing any day of the week. A lot of what I do now is specifically kind of like client focused. So like I said, I help people make stuff, and a lot of it is just whatever it takes. Obviously, the pandemic has kind of altered my my work a little bit, but probably the most different thing now is that I have to do every step of the process. When I was working as an engineer, I would literally just go to work and they'd give me something to do, and then, well, in most cases anyway, then I could focus on that. A lot of what I have to do right now is across the board. Communication is essential. I'm always kind of emailing and talking to people. If somebody wants to talk about like a project, I have to kind of establish what they want, what the specifics are. If I don't have a specific project, then I'm usually working on something internal. Right now, on account of the pandemic, I've been doing a lot of studying. I do like a lot of web development, working on a couple of projects as well. So it's just really just kind of, I can really just be working on anything. Like right now, what I'm working on a web design project. I'm working on a design project for doing somebody who wants to make some injection molded tires. And then I'm also just doing some tool, I guess I'll call it tool manufacturing. Tool manufacturing for a sewer who wants to make some smaller like French curves. So I'm using computer aided manufacturing tools. So now I just kind of get up. As Dean said, I'm not, I don't know how y'all got me up this early, honestly. But most days I don't get up. I get up early if I have to. So obviously for you guys, I'll get up, or maybe it's more accurate to say not go to sleep, but whatever. But that's pretty much that's kind of my rambling answer on my days. But yeah, you just kind of pick my project and I kind of just go at it.
All right. Maybe you've covered it in multiple ways, but what's your most favorite part of the job?
My favorite part of the job. Okay. Now, do I get a PC answer? Or do I get the actual answer? I like. Honestly, if I'm completely honest, I like the aspect of that moment where someone realizes that I actually know what I'm talking about. Or that moment where, because I think what's interesting is for me now as kind of like a freelancer, is that when I came out of school, I was working around a whole bunch of engineers. So when you think about, so earlier I talked about skilled labor, right? And like what my skills are and things like that. And so what was interesting for me was coming out of school is that I'm working around a whole bunch of engineers. And there's a whole lot of things that you take to be normal. When I moved out to California and started working out in Hacker Lab, and then kind of in the space out here. Now, don't get me wrong, I work around a whole bunch of creative and skilled people who've taught me a lot and stuff like that. But I do really like being able to like apply my experience and expertise and have that moment where somebody's like, "Oh, I didn't think of that," or "Wow, that's amazing." I like that. I like that because it's a tangible kind of representation of the work that I put in, and I like being able to apply that. So I think that's the thing I enjoy the most about what I do.
All right. Continuing, Maddie from West Park. Have you ever broken something just so you can learn how to fix it?
Oh, absolutely, yes. When I was a kid, yes, I'll say broke. Yeah, I was always taking stuff apart. And actually, what was funny was one of my earliest ones. My grandfather, he was a facilities dude and stuff like that. He was born in Mississippi and didn't go higher than 6th grade, but he was very mechanically aptitude, and that's I think one of the big things that I get my mechanical aptitude from. He used to always. I actually went away to school. So another weird thing about me is I actually graduated high school when I was 16 years old. I started school when I was 3 years old. There's a whole story behind that. You guys can email me for that if you want that one or whatever. But anyway, I went away to high school my 10th, 11th, and 12th grade year. Went to a boarding school, basically because the schools where I grew up weren't that good. So I wanted to try to get into college and stuff like that. So again, this is how I thought when I was like 10, 11. So I'd come home. And he'd always have stuff left for me to fix because when I was a kid, like when I was young, like single digits, the remote stopped working, and so I took it apart and I cleaned it. And at first he was like, "Oh, what are you doing? You don't know what you're gonna break it." And then I fixed it, and it made me laugh because then every time I came home, he'd have like 3 things set apart for me, like to basically take apart and try to fix. Like the phone might not be working right, or some little appliance or things like that. But yeah, no, I took stuff apart all the time, and yeah, but in the beginning, yeah, stuff definitely got broken.
Cool. So Rohit asked, do you have to go to college to become an engineer?
No. Although, so this is kind of what's interesting about it. So you don't have to come. I definitely know engineers that haven't gone to college. I mean, there's a lot of there are paths where people just get it through experience, like just by working and stuff like that. And I'd probably say that one of the faults of a lot of engineers is that you go to, well, some engineers, I'm going to say a lot, but a number of engineers, especially when you're new, is that you've gone to school, you've taken all these classes, but you're lacking that real world experience. So, and now what's also interesting is that, we use engineering as a term, but there's a lot of gap in between. And I mean, and honestly, this is one of the things that I found when I started, right before I started freelancing. It's actually one of the things that made me start freelancing, because the other thing is that engineers are expensive. And so, but you have a lot of designers and draftsmen and things like that who operate at different parts of the process. When I was working as an engineer at Rockwell, there were draftsmen who would take our designs and kind of do that stuff like that. And then there were also draftsmen who were actually functioning kind of engineering roles because they had the experience. I will say, and I guess I have to say this because I went to college, so I have to protect my path as well. I will say there is something to be said for learning like engineering as a formal discipline, just because of it's a process more than anything else. So I will say that, and when you think about schools, you think about like accreditation and things like that, like just the breadth of knowledge. I would say it is important, but do you have to go to college to become an engineer? No. And there's definitely paths to that do not involve college. But I will say education is going to be a part of the process no matter what route you go. So you're not going to get away from that.
Cool. Yeah, I know. I had an uncle who worked for John Deere, the tractor manufacturer, back in the Midwest, and I call him the self-made engineer. He was a pattern maker for them, but he got to the point where you give him a project and he could design it and build it.
Yeah.
So, but that was a while ago as well, in a different era almost.
Yeah.
Really good question here from Mark. What's the best way to get an internship?
Best way to get an internship? Woo! Honestly, again, I'll tell you by any means necessary. So a lot of people will tell you about. So one of the things about my experience was that a lot of things that I've done have been kind of off the beaten path. Now, my last internship I got through collegiate organizations. So I'd probably say engineering affinity organizations or collegiate organizations are probably a good place because I was very active in the National Society of Black Engineers when I was in college. I was actually president of my chapter for 2 years. And I actually got my last internship at Rockwell College through their National Career Fair. So I'd probably say involvement in clubs and activities, because generally you want to create that's a way to create networking. So one of the things you'll hear people say is network. Well, how do you network? Well, you have to network by putting yourself in positions to where you can talk to industry professionals, because that last one I got, my last internship I got because of my involvement in an organization, and my first internship I got because of my involvement in a different organization. But those middle two I got because of people that I knew or people that I talked to. So it's about there's this old movie, Glenn Gary, I think it's Glenn Ross, for the guys like always be closing. So it's really kind of about putting yourself in a situation to where you're always ready to prepare to sell yourself. But it's hard because you don't even know where to start. There's actually I actually have a story about NSBE for that. NSBE was really Nationalized Black Engineers was really good for me because towards the middle of my academic career, I wasn't doing well in school, and it was tough. Like engineering, and academic is very rigorous academically, and so I got those internships, and my grades were not good. I mean, I got enough to graduate, but I was they'd have dinners where we'd be sitting around with professionals, and so I was sitting next to this one guy, and I think this was like the first or the second NSBE convention I went to. And I was talking to this guy, and I says, man, I go and talk to these, because you go to career fairs with your resumes and stuff like that. And I said, I talk to all the employers, and everybody's talking about my GPA. And it's like, man, I can do work. I have experience and stuff like this. And the guy turns to me and he says, why should I hire you? And I'm like, because I wasn't expecting that. He said, oh, you lost it. And so then he says to me, well, the thing is that you have to learn how to sell yourself and kind of, be aggressive with that, because then if you can make an impression on me, then you don't go in the GPA pile, you go in a different pile. So as far as those internships, you have to look for opportunities to connect with people. And I think that's even harder now because we want to do online stuff. We want to just submit a resume and stuff like that. But you want to create opportunities to connect. You want to create opportunities to be around professionals. So for me, that's through affinity organizations. That's through just, although that's harder now because of the pandemic. And also now, so, you have virtual stuff, building your skills, building a portfolio. One of the things which was nice was in my later, since I had my skills, I could go to a prospective employer and be like, hey, this is something that I've built. So when we're actually doing more and more important stuff, definitely build, definitely by doing contact with people. Although actually an event like this is actually a really, really good chance to do that. I mean, I put my information out there. You can always reach out to me. A lot of these SVMI guys, a lot of people will really try to help you as long as they see that you're putting in effort. If I as a professional can see somebody putting in effort, it makes me want to help them rather than somebody just coming up and saying, give me an internship. So you got to be proactive, and it's hard, but that's really what I got as far as things like that.
And, I'd like to add, I know that Terry Griffin from Roseville Joint Unified School District is working to build an internship program for students across the region. So I think for any of the instructors here, they just need to connect with Terry as well. As you said, Alan, I know that, COVID's kind of creating some challenges here in terms of trying to get internships set up, but I think they're more focused on what they can do in 2021.
Yeah, cool.
Let's see. I think we have time for one more question. Chase from West Park. What's the funniest thing that's happened to you while working on a project?
Oh, goodness. All right. Okay, I got to tell them what's one that I can tell in polite company.
I know. That's always the question.
Funniest thing that's happened to me that's happened to me while working on a project. It'll have to be there's answers to that question I can't tell. But anyway, when I was working for Rockwell Collins, so back I think about my second year or something like that, we actually got the chance to go to England. So basically there was a division in England that was having trouble, and they needed some extra manpower. Now the whole thing actually just turned out to be a boondoggle, because what it essentially happened is that just from the side of it was that they were working on this project where they're making these projectors, and as best as I can tell, now this is just since I'm far removed for it and stuff like that, the VP that was over it was actually based out of our location, and what I believe happened is that they said, oh well, we need more people, and the guy called his bluff and sent like 5 or 6 of us out there. But a lot of it was just kind of us kind of sitting around and twiddling our thumbs. But it made for a lot of interesting situations because we're still working with these people, so we're hanging out with them and things like that. So just the whole kind of like, I think just the whole kind of absurdity of the thing was kind of interesting, but it was also kind of cool because it was the first time I had left the country. So that was that whole experience. It's definitely something that kind of makes it look. I look back at it and I laugh now because while it was going on, I didn't really see what was happening. But I think as you gain experience and then you kind of see the things that you didn't see before, that it was just a whole mess. But I got a trip to England out of it, so it was cool.
Good. Hey, Alan, I'd like to thank you and let you know that it's time for the classes to move on.
Okay.
So thanks, Alan. Thanks to all the instructors for your participation. Thanks to all the students. A lot of really great questions here this morning.
Yeah. If any students have any questions, feel free to reach out to me over email or something like that. I think my information's in the presentation. But yeah, I'm always happy to answer questions if you can nail me down.
Right. And these presentations are being recorded and they will be posted and shared next week. And you can look at them with your classes later on.
Okay.
So thank you very much, everybody, for participating.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Alan. And I
Thank
guess it's your turn, or is Kevin turning it off?
Yeah. I don't know if
I guess Kevin's going to shut it down for us.
Yeah. I think I don't know if I have the link because I got the link for the 1231. I don't know if I got the link for the 1031.
Okay, I'll send you the link for 1030.
Okay, cool.
Just to make sure.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
No problem. We'll see you in a little bit.
All right, see you in a bit.
Okay, bye.
Bye.